I think we really leaned into the whole period ambiguity of Aunt Gladys. Wow, this is going to be a dream character.
She's unsettling, she's unnerving. She could be your aunt, obviously, that you didn't know or you never met or twice removed, but she's from another planet or another time period. Those are the things that, we've all grown up with people where we felt trapped around.
The idea was to put something on the table that was very easy to recognize, but also just, it had this really kind of uncomfortable, but like feel a little sad for this woman. Like she's trapped like somewhere. And where does she get this wig?
Hi, I am Chad Anderson, one of the hosts of Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify their skill set. You can learn more on filmmakeru.com or follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week, we are delighted to interview a vast array of film and TV professionals. And this week, we are pleased to be joined by special effect artist Jason Collins, whose work includes The Maze Runner and I Know What You Did Last Summer. Also with us is makeup artist Leo Satkovich, whose work includes DC's Doom Patrol. And lastly, we have Melizah, whose work includes Looper and Scream 7, as well as a whole list of other films they've worked on and TV shows as well. But all three of these fantastic people are here today to talk to us about what I will say is the scariest movie of the summer, which would be Weapons. Everyone's talking about this movie. My kid wants to see this movie. I have friends of mine who've seen it like 2-3 times now, and we talk about it at length. It's really exciting. I've seen a lot of scary movies recently, and it's really exciting to see a movie that I really do feel is actually scary. There was a really nice, well job done with this to not make it kind of silly or ridiculous or over the top and not as much jump scares. Do you think that horror movies are picking up and rising again for any of you? Do you think I see it a lot more in trailers for movies. Do you think there's something about this generation that's now embracing horror movies again as an idea?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Look at the world around you. I feel like we're living in a horror movie, and I think going to the movies and going to see horror movies is a really great way for everyone to just process all that pent up anxiety that they have inside them. And I think it provides more of a coping outlet to process all those feelings that everyone has about the world at this time.
Yeah, I think, for sure, society right now is in a place because horror's been doing so well this last year. I think that, we're in a place where people can go and sort of live out whatever all this pent up stuff is going on. I mean, you just open up social media and you see pent up stuff left and right, argumentative this or that. It's a place to go sit in the dark and just watch, whether it be aggression or fear or any of these things sort of play out. Horror's always had that sort of stronghold on our society and in our entertainment. So I think, horror is also not what horror used to be. People are actually using the genre of horror to retell actual classic sort of hero archetype stories. You know what I mean? So it's not subjected to just one viewpoint anymore.
This generation, and I think just the older generations like myself and others, that horror has taken a different turn. And I think that it's nice to embrace the fresh, new, innovative ways to film a horror movie. And I also feel like um I think that there's been a greater appreciation for practical effects. I mean, we started long ago with that, and those are like my favorite movies. Is a lot of the older movies where you see this incredible. You're like, how did they do that? Did they have the materials to do this? Like, I don't understand. Like, help me understand. And I feel like it kind of evolved into a merge of the two. Then the CGI came in, and then it was like maybe a 50-50, and then it just kind of got out of control. And I think that, at least to me as a viewer, that we're kind of not backpedaling, but we're kind of going back to the foundation
Returning to
the
our roots.
dynamic. Yes, and it's just so real, and it's just so much more effective, and it's really kind of a cool element to have in horror movies now. To have these fantastic specialists get the stuff out. It's just mind blowing to me. Jason and
Yeah.
company. But yeah, I think that that's a fresh outlook on horror. I think that people are reconnecting with that, and I think that the older generation is like, yes, this is what it's about, and it's not disappointing. Look, it's just it could be disappointing if you're watching a movie and everything's just digital and it's just like,
Yeah.
it's one thing to for a project to be just slightly peppered with a little, but man, the real the just I'm just a huge fan of practical effects. Like, you know,
Yeah, I
it's
was
just incredible.
I sort of got into VFX by accident. I always had a technical interest in photography, and especially as it relates to movie making. There's something magical about the ability to believe something is happening when it isn't. So I went as a live action producer into a company called Bob Abel and Associates. Then I would have to, have a meeting about how do we do this effect that's in this commercial, and I never got the straight answer I was looking for. I have camera knowledge, so it's like, since it's kind of ambiguous, why don't I just grab a camera and we'll try it out. You have to figure out what tells the story and use every trick in the book to solve your problem. I am Rob Legato, and this is my course on visual effects.
Do you think that practical effects or in production effects are making a comeback in terms of, I guess predominantly in horror movies, I see it a lot now. We are transitioning back to that.
We've always been, that's what I do for a living. So we've always been involved to some degree. Sometimes it's been sort of aiding and abetting visual effects just to give them physical assets, if you will, which isn't exciting. It's more exciting to try to do everything in camera. But I will find that, on a couple of my recent projects, I've actually been advocating for some visual effects things because I think it's a better way to go than a practical way, only simply because they're so gung-ho about doing it in camera, which is fantastic. And I want to do it in camera, but you also want to sort of push the boundaries of the fantastic sometimes.
Sure,
And
I understand.
there's just some things that I can't do that I think visual effects would enhance, but I'm finding it interesting that it's much more of a battle now with a lot of younger filmmakers who want to try to get everything as pure as possible in camera, which I think is a fantastic thing. For me, it's great because it keeps us on our feet and we keep trying to push the boundaries of what we can do physically with what we're doing. I welcome it and I applaud it and I want more of it.
I agree with Jason. It's almost like it's going back to the basics, and everyone saw just how much of a hit The Substance was, and how practical everything was, and how grand it was, and how big it was, and it was almost a throwback to those cult horror classics that we all knew growing up. And I just think that, and don't get me wrong, I have a lot of great friends that are just fantastic visual effects artists that it's such an underappreciated department. They work 30 hours a day, to bring us a lot of their designs. But I think a lot of times within the past 20 years or so, in the advent of just how amazing visual effects has gotten, that with our shrinking schedules during actual principal photography, that we've leaned a lot on visual effects, until now there's this resurgence of practical effects again, and people forget just how real it is, and how challenging it is as an artist and a filmmaker to capture those accurately and depict them the way that you want, and how much of an impact it has on the audience when it's done there to camera. It's done during principal photography. It's really just beautiful, and it really sets the tone for the film, if you really want that grounded, realistic experience.
And I think there's like Jason was saying, there is kind of a mix between, there's a safe spot. And I think it really comes down to, what the director or what the creators involved see as what works better for the mood and the tone of the thing. I think in some circumstances, you watch some of those early 80s, horror movies, and you say, oh, this looks fake. Like, and now in hindsight, you're like, we could have done this better if we had a whole CGI team doing this, and it would have looked, less like holding up fake props. But in the same breath, like, I liked Puppet Yoda better than I liked, you know, CGI Yoda. It just was like puppet Yoda just was my Yoda, and it feels for me in that way.
Yeah, for sure. And that was a really cool aspect about weapons. I think we knew from the get. Zach told us from the get-go that he wanted everything, you know, everything done practically as much as possible. So it was really fun figuring out a lot of, you know, a lot of the aspects of creating these items and working with Jason and Melizah to, you know, to bring all of this to life, and working with our visual effects team as well. You know, it was great.
Yeah.
It was a great, huge interdepartmental feat, this movie. So, but definitely doing everything done practically on the show was really cool to witness when watching it as well. It really just sells the realism.
The star of the film, the real star of the film, according to me, is Aunt Gladys. I think we need to talk about Aunt Gladys from a visual, from a makeup and hair and stylistic approach. Tell me about the concept. Like, I don't even know how you start as a you know, a visualization of Gladys. What were you looking to achieve, or what was the tone, I guess, from Zach Kreger in terms of what Gladys needed to look like?
I think when we first started, so when I read the script, I was like, wow, this is going to be a dream character. This is such a
Hmm.
fun character to create, and I believe we all knew from the very beginning that this was going to be an extremely fun character for the audience. And it was a pretty vague blueprint that we got in the script. It was a, you know, it was an older woman with a very gaudy, caked on makeup, clown like, I believe was the adjective, and bright red hair, and that was about all we had to go off of. Our fabulous costume designer Trish Somerville started a little bit before us, so we had a foundation already. She had already kind of started pulling all of these clothing items, her and Zach, and then we came on board, and it just became this big Aunt Gladys love fest.
Hmm.
And then I know personally from, you know, from where the beauty makeup is, from my standpoint, I saw where Trish Somerville was going with the costume design, and I just loved her color blocking. You know, those pops of color, the pantsuits. She really could have been pulled out of any period. So I think we really leaned into the whole period ambiguity of Aunt Gladys. And from there, me personally, you know, I played with a little bit of, you know, 40s, 50s lips, late 60s eyeliner. You got that 50s powder blue eyeshadow, and we just kind of, you know, a pretty timeless red nail, and then we just kind of went with it. And then Melizah and Jason did their things to really make her as unsettling as possible. But we knew that we wanted her grounded in reality. We wanted her to
Yeah.
exist on this mortal plane and not like she was some sort of ghoul or
Demon character, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there is kind of like it's not like she's a supernatural character, but she's almost a person you wouldn't want to be behind in the grocery line. Like there's a
No, for
gaudiness to her
sure.
that's a little
Yeah.
bit terrifying.
We
Um,
always say that if you saw her walking on the street, and we said this from the very beginning with Zach, you know, if you saw her walking on the street, on the sidewalk, you wouldn't necessarily jump to the other side of the road wanting to call the Ghostbusters, you know what I mean? But you would definitely shy to the far end of the sidewalk and kind of give her an eyeball as you walk past, then text your friend and say, girl, you won't believe what I just saw.
No, I was gonna say she's a bit of a suburban horror if you think about it. It's
yeah.
like these things. I mean, I'm gonna coin this phrase right now, right here.
Suburban horror. I love
Suburban
it.
horror character. And that is that kind where it's like she's unsettling, she's unnerving. She could be your aunt, obviously, that you didn't know or you never met or twice removed, but she's from another planet, it feels like, or another time period. And you know, those are the things that, you know, we've all grown up with people where we felt trapped around, you
Yeah.
know. And I think that this is a person that likes to make people feel that trapping, and you know, definitely likes to sort of chase them into the corner with her, you know, her whole get up and her whole thing, and she gets off on it. She gets some energy from it. She, you know,
Yeah.
pulls in it. um I like that kind of suburban kind of creature, if you will. You know, it's something that we've never done before, as far as, you know, here, but we should have Melizah talk about the hair before we get into
Yeah, no, definitely,
wig.
definitely the hair.
All about the wig.
Well, I mean, it's again, like Leo said, it kind of developed in prep with the bones of building Aunt Gladys on paper, reading. We knew she'd have red hair, and there was a basic outline in place. And it wasn't until we really started to pull inspiration photos and getting hair swatches and just show and tell, like, is this the kind of red you want, or is this, there's just so many variations of red color. And then so when we got to uh, building our tools for the camera test, it was quite exciting to see these different length wigs on Amy. It was such a it just evolved slowly, but with every moment that went by, we were like, oh yeah. And then we knew exactly where to, we were feeling our way through at the camera test. And, I tried different wigs, and I knew right away with the collars on her costumes that we wanted to elevate the length and not go too short. We wanted to expose her amazing earlobes
Mhm.
that were designed. And it just, the idea was to, uh, we wanted to kind of put something on the table that was very easy to recognize, but also just, it kind of just it just magically kind of happened when all the pieces were put together. It had this really kind of uncomfortable, but like you kind of feel a little sad for this woman, like she's trapped like somewhere, and where
Yeah.
does she get this wig, like what's up with that? And for a moment, just for a tiny moment, it was mentioned that maybe does she have different color wigs in her suitcase, and like does she have a black wig, and does she have a brown wig? And but then immediately we just, Zach was said, no, let's just stick with one wig. So
Red
that would have been a whole
color.
different thing, I don't know, but it worked out magically and beautifully. And yeah, and so then just, again, just building her look with the camera test, and getting her in front of that camera, it just kind of, the spark started, and it was just refining the look after that, and dialing in where we wanted to land with her look.
You know what? As a testament to that, I love Amy Madigan. I do. I've loved Amy Madigan since Streets of Fire. I loved her in Field of Dreams, and I watched this entire film, and I kept going, "Who is this? I know who this person is."
Oh,
And it's one thing when you watch a film and it's you can't escape the fact that you're watching Will Ferrell, and you're like, despite however they do it, it's still Will Ferrell or it's still Nicolas Cage there. But I watched this and I was like, "Who is this?" And then I had to wait for the credits to roll and goes, oh my God, this, like I could see the face, I could hear the voice, I could see the things, but it was all it was Aunt Gladys, and that's
Yeah.
exclusively it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I felt like there was a difference, and I don't know if it was cognizant of you guys, but between dream scenario Aunt Gladys of horror dream at night, scary dream at night, versus real life Aunt Gladys in the principal's office. I feel like there was two Aunt Gladyses that are emotionally different, or you know,
Yeah.
some feeling that I had that just felt different in terms of fear.
It's a good observation because it definitely was that way. And Leo
yeah.
and Melizah can to chat this up, but the accentuation of the makeup taken even further in the
Yeah.
performance and
We
everything.
definitely tricked it up a few notches just for impact with lighting, and just the whole the scene itself, just to play in and to kind of magnify the effect of what the viewer was gonna see, and so the wig was a different shade of red copper, and the texture was different. It was very, very hard lines, very structured, and just disconnected, still in the neighborhood of the Aunt Gladys silhouette, but a little bit more disturbing.
Hmm.
And we were told that it was going to be a very quick punch, and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
we wanted it to just like in your face, like say something. So
yeah.
it was kind of cool to have that to go to, you know, and we could pull back and as her hero look. But yeah, it made it really a lot of fun. But yeah,
for sure.
Leo, elaborate on the so
Yeah,
funny.
you know, we actually had about, I would say, a solid 4 ideations of Aunt Gladys throughout the film. The nightmare was obviously what we see first in the film. Those nightmare looks when she manifests as something, you know, a little extra creepy and throughout everyone's nightmares. And Zach told us that whatever this look is, it needs to be heightened. It needs to be elevated. So whatever we do, we established this before we actually established her hero makeup look. So he was like, whatever we do here, it just for whatever we do for her hero makeup look, this has to be 200% more. You know, I don't want to stray from the Aunt Gladys concept. It has to be an ideation. It has to be just this other kind of Aunt Gladys. And keep in mind, you're only going to have less than a second to get this point
Yeah.
across. She is going to be quick. It's going to be very quick. It could be dark. So whatever you do, it's got to be bold. It's got to be impactful. So we essentially just kind of took everything that we did for a hero makeup look, bumped it all up, made it a little, you know, a darker, brighter, splotchier, more squiggly, more angled, and everything was just the lips were more red and smeared more, just to really drive that, you know, drive that point home. And but you also didn't want to exactly just give away who she is just yet until we see her in the principal's office.
Yeah.
I can imagine like notes you're writing in the margin that say like more squiggly and trying to understand what that meant when you wrote it.
I love the fact that you said that you didn't recognize it was Amy Madigan, because we did do significant things to change every little thing, but those little things helped tremendously.
Yeah.
Like she's wearing a prosthetic nose throughout the whole production.
Yeah.
And all of her different looks, and that a nose changes your face completely, you know, and we wanted to give her more of a predatory kind of feel to her, more beak-like, if you will, when she's sort of staring down the barrel of the gun, looking at Alex at the dinner table, you know, and that kind of thing. And we modified one pupil. We made those teeth, those baby teeth, which are frightening. But all of these things go to change lip lines, go to change
Yeah.
lip muzzle being pushed out as far as the nose and everything. So all of these things together, I love the fact that you couldn't tell it was Amy until you.
Yeah.
And also, Amy's not one of those actresses she's always that actress where you're like, oh man, she's such that great character actor. She's not always in the vernacular of your top 10 Netflix things, but
Yeah.
she's just always been there and she's always been great. So the fact that you really tell and compiled with what she brought to the character, which is a completely different animal for her, this character than
it is
play, is awesome. It's good to hear that you couldn't tell who it was till you read the.
Yeah, I was like, you got me. My coworker brought up something. He's seen this 2 or 3 times, and Benedict Wong's character Marcus gets possessed. And there's a prosthetic possession explosion of his face or bulging of his eyes, that whole thing. And obviously we both noticed that, but what he noticed was that it starts at like a 2 in the kitchen, and by the time he ends up seeing Julie Garner at the gas station, it's like at 11, and the face just continues to grow like it's about to explode. That happened, right? I'm not just imagining that. It was an ever evolving face of the Marcus character. Yes.
Well, you know what's funny is that yes, you are correct. And we played around with so many ideas to get the look of the eyes, to where we eventually just ended up going with visual effects to get that effect. Just because anything that we would have done, I think it would have crossed that line that we were trying to not cross into kind of that camp territory. We wanted you know, Zach brings you right up to that line, and you know, you kind of teeter on it, but you never want to step over it. And it was such, like you said, you weren't even sure that it was happening to begin with, and that was kind of, you know, that was kind of the whole point of it, was you don't want to get punched in the face with it. uh,
Yeah.
there are so many great moments that you get to really study what's happening in his face. So it's really cool that it's not something that's going to jump right out and grab you, that you really have to notice it. And but that was Zach's thing, is when they do become possessed and activated, if you will, that he wanted this bulging eye effect that is, you know, it strikes terror. It is really horrifying. And but I think just to do it practically, I'm not so sure it would have given the same effect that Zach was going for, just because
Yeah.
either time you're adding or subtracting mass right here. Plus Benny was running. We did about 5 solid days of that, and you know, the 98-degree, 100-degree Georgia heat, and he was just running. Second units of him running, and from a safety perspective too, it just make more sense to make sure his vision was unobstructed that way.
That's fair.
Yeah,
That's
and
fair.
with Larkin shots too, I mean, one thing I noticed when I was watching the film again is that, you know, those shots, you know, as he gets closer to Julia, those shots get bigger and fatter of his
Yeah,
head.
that's true.
Closer, and he's already got such a crazy amount of like insanity going on between the black vial and his husband's blood all over him from bashing his head in, and all of those things. I mean, you know, that poor Benny running around in that 90-degree heat, 100-degree heat with 90% humidity. It's like, I couldn't imagine throwing a prosthetic on him at the same time. Like, you can only see straight ahead of you. Good luck.
Yeah. Yeah, I can. Yeah, I mean, that was some running. I couldn't. You know.
Yeah.
He
don't know if
actually hung
I'm-
out in the freezer at the gas station.
He was in the
He was
freezer.
Wow.
chilling in the
Wow.
chiller. That's
Yeah.
where they put that's where they put his actor chair. And
That's fantastic. I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, and he was just happy as could be. You know, he had a great attitude about it the whole time, and it was a lot of fun.
Curious about creating high-quality YouTube videos? Enroll in video editing and production classes at Manhattan Edit Workshop to sharpen your skills and turn a hobby into a career. Start your journey to becoming a pro today.
So you have some over-the-top characters. You know, you have Aunt Gladys. You have some of these you know, fantastical characters. But then I think one of the you know, unspoken genius of what all of you do is that you do help to craft characters who are just, you know, regular run-of-the-mill everyday people. And there are some makeup and hair choices that, you know, speak to something that isn't really appreciated. And oh yeah, he's got a side part, big deal, you know, like, but there's something to that. Or his hair is slicked back, which is a, you know, an idea. And then, you know, there's certain characters in film history that I know with a different haircut, you know, would have ruined the whole thing. What goes into like the ideas of what the makeup's going to look like, what the hair is going to look like, what some special features of kind of secondary characters, or just, you know, run-of-the-mill characters, even Julie Garner and Josh Brolin, they have a look, you know, they have a look, and you're supposed to get something from that look of, you know, easily identifiable things that are this person.
For hair, I would say that you know, I usually dial into of course the character, and I start there, of course. You know, are they structured? Do they have a lot of you know, discipline in their life? What's going on? Or how put together are they? Are they very unraveled? So I kind of look at those elements, and how much time would this person put into themselves, and what's their, and costumes plays a lot into this too, because it's like, what's the vibe, as we say, what's the vibe of their character? And I'll be quite honest, a lot of times I'll ask the actor, you're the character, what would, you know, this character do, or how do you feel like? And sometimes they surprise me and they'll tell me like, well, I would absolutely not XYZ or whatnot. And so it's a nice marble of all those things. And then of course our director, you know, or Zach would say, you know, definitely it's like the parents, we start, they're regular family folks. They're very, just casual parents or young, cool parents, I guess. And then, as the movie goes on, you can just see the their look just getting more raw and dis just dismantled. And then we go back, and then we flash forward, I guess, because the movie's so disconnected that he's got his comb over. He's got the comb over, like he wouldn't never wear his hair like that as a dad. He never had, but Gladys fixed his hair like that.
Yeah.
And so it's just a move that wasn't his regular character look, but it makes such a big impact on the story.
Sure.
And so just little things like that. Again, designing around the character. Julia Gardner's character just, she's out the door. She barely makes it to work on time. I'm assuming. Her just disheveled, just kind of just making her
Yeah.
day, just barely making her day. So we didn't put too much time into her look. Kept it really simple and very organic. I think that's how it was with most of the cast is,
Yeah,
Marcus,
yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, what's funny? They are such a group of amazingly likable people. Austin, Julia, Josh, Benny, Alden. They are such likable people, and in the story, they're almost not. They're not very likable. They're not very likable
No.
people. I mean, Julia's a drunk. Austin is
Drug addict.
a klepto drug addict. Alden cheats on his longtime girlfriend with his ex. So they're not exactly the most likable people. So I think everything about this film was designed to keep you on edge, even if it is at some sort of subconscious level. So I know, especially it was challenging to find those little things in just a straight real makeup. So some of the things that we did from the straight makeup side was definitely that arc. We had a makeup arc, so everyone kind of they didn't even start out at their best. They just kind of started out as they started out, and then we gradually degraded them from there. There are times that Julia had to say, "Leo, it's still a movie," and I'm like, "You're right, you're right. It's still a movie. We'll do a little bit more concealer. That's fine." But it was just it was finding those happy mediums, because you don't necessarily. I don't think Zach's intention was necessarily having the audience become connected to this cast on a sentimental level. It was a whole nother level that these characters operated at. So it was really just finding that connection, and what connection you want the audience to have with them. I feel like we can all see ourselves at some point or another in these characters, those kind of unlikable characteristics that we don't like about ourselves. I feel like these characters have those, and that contributes to that overall general feeling of being uncomfortable when you're watching this, because you're like, oh, that's Julia Garner and I really want to like her, but you're like, oh, she's kind of, I don't know if I like what she's doing too much. So you build this different relationship with them, and I think that comes across in their hair and makeup, because none of them are necessarily the most polished of characters.
Yeah, there's something there's disturbing about it, and it's this traumatic thing has happened to the town, and now it's and I guess if you grew up in a small town kind of suburban kind of environment, like these circumstances, and the town drunk or the town drug addict there.
I'd be the town
Jason,
drug addict.
what'd you say?
I'd probably be the town drug addict.
Okay.
Don't go near that guy, please.
No, I think it's funny because Austin Abrams, I think, is a relatively good-looking guy.
Yeah.
And you made him look like what I imagine,
That's another thing I loved about the characters in the movie, though. I love that watching it again, I was watching the characters and their motivations, and not one character has a clean motivation with the exception of Gladys. Now, if you think about it, even the kid is doing something. He goes and he gets all the name tags and everything to give to Gladys and everything. He's even selling out his people, his friends, to get the betterment of something. The only person that has a straight motivation here is Gladys. And it's like, and she's the villain, but is she? You know, it's like stuff like that where you're like, everybody else is flawed and does things for their own ego and their own sort of behavioral sort of advantage. Whereas this one's coming in and just like, I'm just gonna suck your life force. You're gonna like it.
Well, Gladys had a dream, she was the only one who really had a real dream in her heart and wanted to make that dream come true.
Yeah, leave our villains alone.
I have one more question for each of you. If you weren't doing makeup, hair, or special effects or prosthetics or any of these other things, fantastic, amazing work that you do, what else would you be doing with your life? Leo, I'll ask you, what is the other, alternative, universe Leo doing as a job?
Why do you make me go first? Hey, I was such a weird little science kid when I was younger. And I don't think I have the brain capacity to do that. So, but if I was a big brain person, I think I would be a virologist somewhere in the jungles of Africa studying some weird disease.
Exciting. Better
That's
you than
huge.
me.
I was such a nerd. I read The Hot Zone like over and over when I was younger, and Stephen King's The Stand and everything. And don't ask.
So I'll break one too many times. Jason, how about you?
Well, I do think that the town drug addict has a nice vibe to it. Maybe I would be that, but I think if I wasn't doing this, I'd probably be like a Vegas magician.
Wow.
I love that.
Wow, that's cool. That's fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I started doing this when I was 11. I wanted to do magic and had all these magic tricks, and my mom took me to a magic store and I found a book on makeup effects, and it's kind of like magic tricks on the skin. So
yeah,
if I wasn't doing this, I'd be doing that kind of a
I mean,
I'd also have my shirt down like this. That kind of
it is, because if you look at the film from a historical perspective, you talk about Georges Méliès,
it's all magic trick.
It was a magic tricks. It's all just magic tricks. It's, he started out as a magician and then went into filmmaking, and that was, his direction. Melizah, how about you?
I always, I've had this funny, I've had people ask me this before, but I would be an interior decorator.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Really?
even when I was young, like I was in junior high and high school, and my parents would come home from work and I would have the whole house rearranged. I would move the furniture around, and I'd move, I would completely revamp the house. And my dad would freak out, like, how did you move the china cabinet? And I was like, I used my legs. I would just always wanted to reinvent the house. I would just move things and try different things. I couldn't keep looking at the same thing, and it would just change it. I do that if I'm like right now I'm in Vancouver, and I'll get home, and if my husband's out working, he'll come home and the whole house is also it's just everything moves around. So yeah, I would say an interior decorator.
I will tell you that you will be so disappointed in me. My neighbor, this literally just before this interview, my neighbor was throwing out an ottoman that they've had in their house, and it looked comfortable. It matches nothing else in my house.
Oh, no.
And so I've taken it. You would be so displeased to walk into my home right now and see this ottoman that doesn't even fit in the same level as the rest of the couch. It's pretty tragic. I should not be an interior designer because I'm
free. It was free.
It was free. Yeah.
It was free. It'll find a home.
I see where you're going with it. I do.
I want to thank all of you, Leo, Jason, Melizah. Thank you so much for giving the time to talk to us and telling us about this fantastic film. It really is, I guess, the horror movie of the summer, maybe of the year. It is fantastic. That's going to be it for us this week. You can check us out at filmmakeru.com or follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Again, I am Chad Anderson. Thank you so much to my guests, and thank you so much to all of you for watching.